room 339 in the Friedwald Nursing Home, where my father, Harav Chaim Yel ben Harav Yosef Shem Feldman, Zecher Tzaddik B'Kaddish L'Bracha, where he has resided for the past 2.5 years, has gone silent. The ventilator that was breathing for him and the monitors that were on his body have been turned off. The nurses who checked his vitals every few hours, and the aides, mostly from the country of Haiti, who cleaned and changed him multiple times a day, have been released from their holy mission of taking care of what was left of my father. I will no longer have the zchus to see the people from Bikur Cholim who would come in every day, and the director of Friedwald Nursing Home, Steve Stown, who is a Tzaddik Yisod Olam, Tzaddik of Muncie, Rabbi Shlomo Sperling, who came in every day, make sure that my father put on tefillin if we didn't. I will no longer have the zchus to hold in my hands the Amudei Sheish, the feet of my father, that I was zeicher to massage every day. For 2.5 years, my sister Aviva and I visited my father every day, every night. And this morning, I normally would visit him around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and go into Manhattan later. This morning I got a call at 6:30 in the morning, an emergency. I had to go into the city. And I went into the city, and I'm in a meeting. In the middle of this meeting, I get the call. My sister Aviva, who is home and works not far away, she got a call this morning also as the emergency contact. She happened to miss the call. It went to voicemail. Mud Mazach, that were there all the time, and we weren't there. My brother Eli got the news on an airplane, flying back from Israel. He just got back a few hours ago, and we had to tell him Nebuch via text message that this happened. My brother Avram traveling at the time. What happened? My father didn't want us to see. He just didn't want to leave until we were over. My father was born June 9, 1935, Es Sivan Tov Reish Tzaddik in New Hampshire. Moved at a very young age to Baltimore. He was the youngest of 3 sons born to Harav Yosef Shem Feldman, Zechron L'Bracha. He married my mother in 1959, and they were married for 47 years. Our Shabbos table every Shabbos is always filled with Divrei Torah. Most people, it's a cliche. We didn't have Divrei Torah. My father and my mother engaged in the most passionate and spirited pilpul battles that you would see in a base medrash between two chavruses arguing over Pshat and Shem Shkop. Battling it out, and we would just sit and laugh. Invariably, my mother would win these machlekes with a raya from a Ramban or something, because my mother had a photographic memory. She knew Kol HaTorah Kula, every Ramban by heart. And my father would laugh and go, no, she's gewaldig. He had such hana. That's what an anav he was. He had such hana how she could beat him in a Torah discussion. He was so proud. Their marriage was built on such love and respect. In their younger years, they suffered in poverty terribly. But they stayed together, worked together, suffered together, no matter what. My mother supported my father through the ups and the downs. My mother was known as an advocate for agunos her whole life. She was very famous for it. this room, we spoke a lot about it, about my mother being an advocate for Agunas. What is not known is my father was also, because my mother was always miyayetz with him what to do, and he was just as much a part of that. When we grew up, if there was one lesson that was so important to my father, he repeated it throughout our childhood. When he would tell us to do something, he would say, don't learn shot, no matter what. He would tell us stories about it. It's very important. Don't second guess. Don't second guess your parents. I could spend my entire time up here talking about the wisdom of that and examples of it. But what I will tell you is I imparted that to my children. And today on the way here, I heard from my daughter that she told it to her children, to my grandchildren, don't learn shot. When your parents tell you something, just listen. Don't think you know better. My father taught me how to swim, how to play chess. He taught me how to lane when I was 6 years old. I knew all the truck. That's what he spent Shabbosim doing. He taught me my first pasuk of Chumash before I walked into pre-1A. He taught me my first Mishnayos of Brachos, Me'ei Masai. He taught me my first Gemara, Amniyat HaSakad. He taught me how to throw a football. He taught me how to throw a baseball. He would play catch with me with regularity in the street in front of our house when we were in Crown Heights in the early 60s. And then later as I grew up on Word Avenue. When I was 6 years old, he taught me how to blow shofar. He taught me how to do bedikas chametz. He taught me how to shake a lulav. My father was very handy. He was an unbelievable carpenter. So he would build a sukkah himself. And I would always help him. And as I was helping him, he taught me the halachas of Tefanim, Skaf, Tolush, Julei Karta. My father was unbelievable Baal Tefillah for Yom Noraim. He taught me the Nusach, and I was a Baal Tefillah for many, many years, based on listening to my father. My father became principal of TA, Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim, in 1969. He was extremely popular with all the students. Extremely popular. They loved him and they were so devoted to him. And he was a very strict disciplinarian. You know, back then you were allowed to be a disciplinarian without going to jail. He bonded with them, and they loved him so much that in 1974, when the board of directors decided not to renew his contract, the entire high school student body went on strike in the middle of the school day. I was 13 at the time, in 8th grade. And I went outside to see the picket line. The entire student body of TA had pickets circling in front of the administration building, that's the middle building now on Old Court Road, with their signs. The TV cameras were there at the time. If you look at the archives of the Baltimore Sun in 1974, you'll find an article about it. You'll see his picture. I went out there to see. I was so proud. They're picketing for my father. My father saw me. Get inside right now. It's for you. Didn't want to hear it. Then he tells all the students to get in, and they didn't. And he suspended every single student who picketed on his behalf. He suspended all of them, and they all got points off. He was such a gibor. My father was such a gibor in every way. Not only a gifted athlete, physically powerful. Everyone in the nursing home was marveling. He was a half vegetable, but when they tried to move him and he resisted, he was stronger than 3 nurses. But he wasn't only physically tough, he was mentally tough and principled. My father was a heavy smoker, more than a pack a day in his younger years. And when my mother, Oliva Shalom, was pressuring him in 1975 to quit smoking, she told me, and he backed up the story, that was a non-exaggeration, that they were driving and she was hocking him, that he has to stop. And he said, okay, and he took the cigarette, threw it out the window, and never touched a cigarette again. Never. No patches, no courses, no hotlines, never faltered. For anyone familiar with nicotine addiction, you'll know how almost impossible this feat is. My father was a Gadol B'Yisrael, an incredible Talmid Chacham, a Rodei Chesed and Mitzvahs, yet at the same time he was such an Anav. He never sought the limelight, and the things he did b'tznius are incredible. He spent the last 20 years, as Rav Heinemann mentioned, being a towing for who? For downtrodden women who are embroiled in nasty, messy divorces, women who had no voice and who had no money. And he did all this for free for 20 years. He never took a penny from anyone. To give you some perspective, I live in Monsey, and I live close to the shul of Rabbi Betzalel Radinsky. And when he heard this story, I told him this about my father, he was nishtaimim. He says he knows, world famous Rabbi Radinsky, he knows every dayan in the world. He never heard of such a thing. But that's what a man does in his retirement years. He's a tayan, he doesn't take money. My father's father, Yosef Feldman, had a friend named Chaim Shapiro, who lived here in Baltimore. Chaim Shapiro and my Zayda Zatzal were friends in Warsaw. And they both ended up here in Baltimore. Chaim Shapiro had a son, Lazer Shapiro. I don't even know if he's here, but he's a good friend of mine. I'm sure you all know him. And we were in class together. When Chaim Shapiro was very sick, the last few years of his life, he was in the hospital and he couldn't move. After he was nifter, Lazer Shapiro came over to me and told me, he says, your father visited my father every day for 2 years. He never missed a day. Not a Shabbos, not a Yom Kippur, not 100 degrees, not in 10 degrees below, every single day. And my father went out of covet for his father, because Chaim Shapiro was his father's friend. Nobody knew. Just went every day, never missed. When my father had his accident in Eretz Yisrael 2.5 years ago, he was taken to the shock trauma unit of Hadassah. And in the shock trauma unit, the neurological shock trauma unit, there are only a few amount of rooms there. It's divided into 2 sections. You should never know it. Families who are there, because we're all there for the same reason, we all get close, we all get to know each other. There was a girl across the hall from my father in the unit. Her name was Ayelet de Beer from the Netherlands. Ayelet de Beer was a nurse in that hospital who was a young woman, 27, vivacious, friendly, funny. She started having headaches, and they took her for an MRI, and they discovered she had a brain tumor. And the mudnazach about her condition was that in order to save her life, they would have to do an operation, that after the operation she would no longer have the power of speech because they were going to cut through the Broca center of the brain. And so her parents came in from the Netherlands to be with her, to be menachem her, to hear her voice one last time. I'm sitting across the hall with my father, and I got to know her parents and her, so I was familiar with this story. She goes in for the surgery, and she comes back, and when she comes back, all the doctors and nurses who were her friends were around there with her to comfort her, because she would wake up without having the power of speech. All of a sudden, I hear screams from my father's room. I hear screams coming from her room. Elokim, Elokim, crying and screaming. Everybody ready to see what was going on. The girl was talking. The non-frum doctors were crying. It's an unbelievable thing. It was. So they took her down for another MRI to see if they made a mistake, because it's medically impossible. And they brought her back that they did not make a mistake, and what was going on was medically impossible. tendency is, and I know it is with me, so I speak for myself, not for anyone else, to think that there's somewhat of an exaggeration, somewhat of a gizmo. I will tell you that the Rosh Hashiva, my father's brother, was there, and I brought him in to see them, and he saw it. He saw it himself. Of course, he won't tell you this, but when he walked out of the room, he came out, collapsed, and started crying, the goddess of Hashem. I'm friendly with the son of the Toldos Aaron Rebbe from Yerushalayim Zatzal, who himself is now one of the Toldos Aaron Rebbe's, a Halakha Mensch in Mekubal. And I was in contact with him when I was there, and I called him up and I asked him for chizuk, and I was so distraught at this mudna accident that happened to my father. And I was talking to him, I told him the story that I just told you about this girl. And he says to me, Reuven, I am very, very disappointed in you. I said, what? He says, you see this thing that happened to this girl, and you're coming to me for chizuk? He says, I have to come to you for chizuk. He says, if you were zeichen to see such a nes, because of what happened to your father, you have a chiyuv. You have a chiyuv to tell everybody, any opportunity you have, what happened. The people should understand the Gadlus Hashem. Ein davar b'fnei Hashem. That was 2.5 years ago. Last month, he came to America, he came to visit me, he asked me how my father was, and I was talking to him, and he said, I want to go visit your father tonight. And so he went, and he gave him a bracha, he said some tefillos, and as he was walking out, I said to him, it's 2.5 years. I said, my father was such a kaddish v'tar. The gizyonis that he has, the gizyonis that he has to go through, the pain, the tsar, he doesn't know the confusion. I said, how could it be? What did he do? And he laughs at me, he pats my cheek. And he says, do you know who my father was? I said, of course. He says, my father had an accident, he fell down the flight of stairs. He crushed his skull. He says, exactly what happened to your father. My father had the same exact brain damage. I walked in there just now, I thought I was looking at my father. The same thing. He says, there's a line. There's a line that we don't ask. You ask up to here, and after that, you just don't ask, you just don't talk. You don't think. There was, after every Shabbos, every Matzah Shabbos, I would run right over to my father. And I keep the early Zman, and we're right next to New Square, and they keep the late Zman, or the late Zman. And one Matzah Shabbos, I walked into my father's room, and I see the Hasidic guy sitting there singing Shalash's Zmira still. I didn't know him. I was there every week, and I didn't know this man. I said, Shalom Aleichem, who are you? Tells me his name. Why are you here? He said, my father was here for 3 years. I would come every Shabbos because New Square was a 7-minute walk from the nursing home where my father was. I'd come here every Shabbos, every Shalosh and sing to my father. My father was nifter last month, and I want to continue doing it. And I know your father's a Halakha Mensch. So I just want to come in here and sing to him to a Halakha Mensch. Me come. Rabbi said, we live in a time where something unnatural is happening. It is not normal for people in their 60s and 70s to be taking care of parents in their 90s, and yet we find this all the time. People who are already senior citizens have no kaya to take care of elderly parents, and really it should be on their children, but the mitzias of the teva is such. Somebody asked Rav Steinman Zatzal this question. Rav Steinman said on himself, when he was 103 years old, before his Tira, he said that the arichas yomim that people are having, and that people are forced to take care of their elderly parents when they are old and have no daya, is because Klal Yisrael needs a tikkun for Esav HaRasha, for the kibbutz of Esav HaRasha. There isn't, I don't know of a person who's my age, in the 50s, 60s, who is not dealing with an elderly parent. People who have parents, cancer, with Alzheimer's. How do you go every day? How do you get up and go to someone who's in a coma every single day? What's the point of going? They don't know you're there. They won't know the difference. For Schwab Zatzal, several of his Einiklock are friends of mine in Muncie. And Rav Nosson Schwab told me, in the name of his Zayda, the following. Nosson Schwab said that what is the pinnacle of Kibbud Av for a Yid in Chazal? The pinnacle is Doma ben Nesina. That's what Kibbud Av is. Rav Schwab says, until you, as a Yid, reach the level of Doma ben Nesina, you have done nothing. You've reached the level of a good. After Doma ben Nesina, you're now being Meiser Nefesh. Up until then, you've done nothing. You're a Yid. You're putting on tefillin. You're keeping Shabbos. It's a mitzvah. You lose so what in terms of Mesiras Nefesh? That's what you do. You do a mitzvah. So you do it. So a person, he gave you such chizuk because it's so easy not to go to see your father when you know he doesn't know. When you know it doesn't make a difference. But you go not because of him, but because it's a mitzvah of Kibbud Av. That's why you're going. You're going for the mitzvah of Kibbud Av. That's it. That's the Mesiras Nefesh. Then you've reached that level. But did my father need what was going on? Did my father need me? Did he need these past 2.5 years? People said I was Meiser Nefesh, my sister was Meiser Nefesh, my brothers were Meiser Nefesh coming in from out of town. We were not Meiser Nefesh. He was Meiser Nefesh. He carried us, Aaron, Naiseas, Naisa. My father was the one. The Mesiras Nefesh for us, the Zchusim that he gave us. Abba, I ask you Mechila for all the aggravation that I gave you as a child. I ask you Mechila for all the times I was sent to your office when you were principal, a TA, and I was a student. I ask you Mechila for getting expelled from Ner Yisrael in 9th grade, although I still maintain I was innocent. I asked Mechila if in the past 3 years I was not attentive enough. I asked Mechila for causing you physical pain when I moved you and not realizing that you were in pain. So many times I missed it. Abba, I'm comforted in the fact that as you depart on your final journey, the cleansing process that you went through these past 3 years has ensured the Malachei Shemayim will be escorting you through the Sharei Shemayim. And there, your Halakha parents and Iman are waiting for you. They have been waiting, anxiously waiting, to sit with you, Tachas Kanfei Hashchina. Certainly your beautiful, pure, and holy neshama is a tremendous asset in Shammai.